Microsoft, Google, and Nvidia praised its scale and potential. But you know what? Beyond the spotlight, companies in Bengaluru were building. The story is definitely changing from market to maker. And now, of course, I would like to introduce you to Indus, which Sarvam AI has unveiled, and it describes it as a fully integrated system built end-to-end rather than layered onto existing platforms. The company says it has developed everything from core infrastructure to the interface. At its center is Sarvam 105B, a large model built in India alongside a lighter 30B version. Both, it says, are designed to operate domestically without relying on overseas servers. This is, however, a complication. Global models are polished and precise, but they can, of course, feel slightly out of place. Ask one to decode a message like, for example, bro, kal work from home hai, but thoda scene tight hai. And of course, you may get a literal explanation about remote work and scheduling constraints. What it actually misses is the subtext, which is, well, I'm technically online, but don't expect any miracles of me. Indus, by contrast, is designed with that linguistic shift in mind. The company says it supports more than 22 Indian languages natively and is built to operate comfortably across code-switching conversations. In a country where many users come online through voice rather than text, that nuance could prove very significant. The numbers are striking. Around 100 million people in India use ChatGPT each week, and the country is one of the biggest markets for Crore. Activity on that scale plays a part in how these systems are improved and developed over time. Sarvam, however, is positioning itself more broadly. The company is not limiting its ambitions to a chatbot, but outlining plans for a wider technology ecosystem. It has announced partnerships with HMD for Nokia feature phones, collaborations with Bosch in the automotive space, and optimization work with Qualcomm to improve on-device performance. They even teased Kaze smart glasses, AI you wear and AI you live. But then, of course, the question arises, is Sarvam a lone wolf? Not at all. The IndiaAI Mission is a 10,000 crore rupees corpus facilitating, well, Bharat-scale, which has just launched, well, Param 2, a 17B model capturing dialects the West doesn't even know exist. Then, of course, we have Gyani.ai, which has announced Vachana, voice cloning for low bandwidth rural areas. Also, there is Tech Mahindra, which is training an 8B Hindi first model for education. This is a very well coordinated effort. The goal? AI-assisted governance and healthcare for the last mile, and not just for the tech community in, for example, Indranagar. Then, of course, there is Crore. Its founder, Bhavish Agarwal, set out to build chips, cloud, and models, ideally all at once. It was an admirably large promise. The follow-through has involved, well, leadership exits, funding questions, and the occasional recalibration. Crore aimed for the whole galaxy in a single launch. Sarvam, by contrast, is proceeding one careful target at a time. Model, language, interface, adoption. The industry is discovering that ambition makes headlines, but actual delivery keeps the headlines relevant. It is not flawless, not yet. Indus remains in limited beta, with waitlists and, of course, at times, slow responses in its more advanced reasoning mode. Compute capacity is still a constraint. It feels, well, in some ways, like the early days of the internet, promising but uneven. Even so, the direction, however, is clear. India no longer seems content to be simply a market for technology. It actually wants a hand in building it. And here, of course, as always, is the front page take. As global companies compete for India's attention, a different ambition is coming to life: to build at home and on home terms. Indus is more than a product launch. It voices intent. Technology shaped by local languages, local realities, and local priorities. And of course, encouragingly, the conversation is only beginning. Oh, and by the way, if you've tried Indus, please share your experience with us. We are definitely listening. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Front Page by the AIM Network. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM. India no longer appears content to draft the plans while others run the production lines. It wants the tools and the foundries. On Saturday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi used the summit stage to announce the approval and fast-tracking of 4 semiconductor units. The India Semiconductor Mission has moved beyond policy documents and into construction schedules. So for a country long associated with software talent, the emphasis is shifting very firmly toward fabrication and hardware capacity, where strategy is measured not in speeches, but in steel and silicon. Set your sights on JVAR, the HCL-Foxconn venture, a 60-40 partnership, Indian capital alongside Taiwanese manufacturing expertise. 3,706 crore rupees committed. Around 3,500 jobs projected. Construction timelines are already being discussed. And by 2028, the site is expected to be more than just scaffolding and a promise. This facility will produce display driver chips, the components that power phone screens and digital dashboards. So for now, most are imported. The intention is to manufacture them in Uttar Pradesh. Constructing the plant is one milestone. Maintaining precision and high production standards over time will actually be the greater challenge. Foxconn arrives with experience. India enters a field where reliability is measured in microns. For a while, in fact, for years, India was described as the world's back office. Interestingly, around 20% of global semiconductor design talent works out of Bengaluru and Hyderabad, producing chip designs that were then well manufactured overseas. That very equation is now being reconsidered. Basically, the ambition of building a trillion-dollar technology economy rests on something tangible. Cloud services alone are not enough. Hardware fabrication and domestic supply chains carry equal weight. From Tata's semiconductor plants in Gujarat to Micron's facility in Sanand, with proposals stretching from Assam to Odisha, investment is spreading across the country, a sign of deliberate industrial intent. And that intent is now materializing in concrete, machinery, and production lines. Global supply chains remain exposed. A disruption in, for example, the Taiwan Strait would have consequences far beyond the region. Against that very backdrop, manufacturers have pursued a China plus one strategy to diversify risk. India is making the case to be that additional anchor. In presenting itself as that additional anchor, India is also leaning into a particular image, a trusted partner, a democratic alternative in an increasingly polarized supply chain landscape. The stakes are very considerable. Washington is paying close attention, and you know what? So is Beijing. In presenting itself as that additional perspective and an understanding, India, as we believe, has become that alternative. And now, of course, as we move along, we have to go ahead and find out about the stakes, which are very, very considerable. And we need to find out about the fact that what is Beijing going to think. Ashwini Vaishnav has called semiconductors the critical layer behind artificial intelligence. And you know what? He is right. Because without chips, even the most advanced software has nowhere to operate. But then, of course, the question at the top of the head is, why JVAR? Why Uttar Pradesh? Because the state already produces a large share of India's mobile phones. The suppliers, transport links, and workforce are all well established. And moving into semiconductors production will take advantage of that very foundation. The transition is also generational, apart from it being industrial. Because for years, ambition gravitated towards software parks and coding roles. Fabrication plants demand engineers trained in material science, clean rooms, and process control. If the last growth story was written in code, the next may be etched in silicon. And here, of course, is the front page take. India's technology strategy is widening from services to fabrication. The IndiaAI Mission now is positioned alongside the Semiconductor mission, linking software ambition with hardware capacity. Artificial intelligence depends on compute. Compute depends on chips. So in the coming decade, advantage may well rest less on applications and more on who controls the underlying silicon. 4 approved plants suggest a very clear direction of travel. The question is whether this marks the start of a sustained industrial chapter, or is this just another costly experiment? Please do let us know what you think in the comments below. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Front Page by the AIM Network. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM. Karnataka is back on Front Page. Yes, not for a ribbon cutting, but for a reckoning. In Bengaluru, officials are studying the figures, and they are not entirely comforting. Chief Minister Siddaramaiah is preparing a decisive intervention. Not a gentle advisory, but a policy shift. The focus is very clear. Those under 16 and their time on social media feeds. It is not presented as a penalty. The language used is one of protection. Ministers have been consulting venture capitalists, teachers, and doctors. The figures, by their account, are very difficult to ignore. Rising addiction, crumbling mental health, academic scores plummeting, and of course, the behavioral shifts that feel like a glitch in the matrix. Which begs the question, is technology a tool or is it a predator? Officials say they are not turning their backs on technology. Their concern is addiction. Algorithms are designed to keep users hooked. The government wants children to have a fighting chance. So let's just think about our own focus for that matter. Now imagine that we are 13. Educators are reporting goldfish syndrome. Attention spans are shrinking to the length of a reel. Classrooms have become distraction zones. Health experts are very concerned. Sleep disruption, anxiety, depression. And you know what? Let us not even talk about physical activity, because that may have actually very well become a legacy feature. Social withdrawal has, in some circles, become fashionable. The smartphone is often the entry point, a steady stream of validation and identity in a world that rarely switches off. The platforms compete for attention. The state argues it is thinking longer term. So what does the plan look like? Well, it's still in the works, but we believe it will be looking at phone-free campuses. Limited social media access for minors, stricter parental controls are under consideration alongside stronger digital literacy programs. The idea being that children should understand the environment before being immersed in it. Exemptions for schoolwork are of course expected. A sweeping prohibition would be, well, I believe a last resort. The preference, officials suggest, is a far more calibrated approach. India would not be acting alone. As we know, the debate over children and social media is playing out across several countries. Australia has moved to restrict access for those under 16. France and Spain are revisiting their regulatory frameworks. China operates a minor mode on many devices, limiting screen time by design itself. The United Kingdom has also tightened oversight. Closer to home, though, states such as Goa and Andhra Pradesh are watching very closely. The idea of an unrestricted digital childhood is no longer taken for granted. There is, of course, however, a complication. India's economic ambitions are closely tied to digital growth. Homework circulates on messaging apps. Location sharing reassures anxious parents. A profile picture often doubles as social identity. Schools depend on devices. Families depend on them too, you know. The paradox is difficult to ignore. The same screen that offers connection and reassurance can also foster overuse and harm. India already has the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. Platforms need parental consent for anyone under 18. The regulatory screws are definitely turning, but can a ban actually work? Young people are often more fluent with these platforms than the adults regulating them. Workarounds are very easily found. Secondary accounts, VPNs, borrowed devices for that matter. Excessively strict controls risk driving the behavior out of sight rather than addressing it. Remember the slogan, Mobile Bidi, Pustaka Hidi? Drop the mobile, pick the book. It's an energy shift. Karnataka is indicating that the mind of a child is a sovereign territory, and it's currently being occupied by big tech. As always, ladies and gentlemen, here is the front page take. This debate extends well beyond screen time. It touches on psychological vulnerability, commercial incentives, and the question of whether children are users or the product. Digital safety is increasingly discussed in the same breath as physical safety. The world is unlikely to become screen-free, we know that. The choice may lie between shielding young people from certain risks or equipping them to manage them. Technology will remain. Childhood does not. Where do you stand? Well, please do let us know. Is 16 an appropriate threshold, or is it an overreach? This, ladies and gentlemen, is Front Page by the AIM Network. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM. We'll take a short little break right now, but when we are back with lots more, only on Front Page.
1,700 GCCs, yes, that's the present footprint in India of the global population of GCCs. $1.9 million people are gainfully employed in these global capability centers. $64.6 billion was generated in the fiscal year 2024. But the big target, that's 2030. 2,200 GCCs is what India wants to notch up to, employing more than 2.8 million people.
I wrote in my book that failures were in bold font for me and success was like default.
If you really want to control the narrative of life, you can do no wrong.
The people who focus on success and, sort of brush away failure, like a Virat Kohli is a great example.
Is doing a great job in bringing the GCC ecosystem together.
So you're adding a lot of value to the GCC ecosystem.
Oh, I had to take a beat and sit down to make sense of this amazing roller coaster ride that we've had at MachineCon 2025. We will catch you again at the next MachineCon.
In just 5 years, Apple's ecosystem has created 2.5 lakh direct jobs and an estimated 7.5 lakh indirect jobs across India, marking one of the largest blue-collar employment surges in recent industrial history. Tata and Foxconn together now employ roughly 140,000 people on their assembly lines. That as well. A little less a single factory and more a township built around production. For a manufacturing ambition, often described in trillion-dollar terms, the scale is beginning to look tangible. Of course, but here is the real plot twist, which is the face of Indian manufacturing isn't who you think it is. 70% of this workforce, women, aged 19 to 24. First-time workers, they aren't just, of course, soldering circuits, they are also rewriting the social contract. We've been streaming this on Front Page for months. Apple's supply chain is the new finishing school for India's daughters. Independence isn't a slogan, it's a bank credit notification. India now hosts 5 iPhone factories. Tata has 3, Foxconn has 2, and they aren't alone. 45 companies, the MSMEs, the grinders, are feeding this mammoth machinery. It's a battlefield out there. High stakes, training, rising salaries, and if you're 22 and looking for the pulse of the economy, it's pulsing in these very assembly lines. Now, of course, for the numbers, 2025 saw $23 billion worth in iPhone exports. That's a 2-time jump from 2024, double. Just like that. Smartphones are now, of course, India's top export category. Apple owns 76% of that entire pie. The narrative used to be assembled in China. Now, of course, the box says made in India. And the world
GCCs. Yes, that's the present footprint in India of the global population of GCCs. $1.9 million people are gainfully employed in these global capability centers. $64.6 billion was generated in the fiscal year 2024. But the big target, that's 2030. 2,200 GCCs is what India wants to notch up to, employing more than 2.8 million people.
I wrote in my book that failures were in bold font for me and success was like default.
If you really want to control the narrative of life, you can do no wrong.
The people who focus on success and, sort of brush away failure, like a Virat Kohli is a great example.
Is doing a great job in bringing the GCC ecosystem together.
So you're adding a lot of value to the GCC ecosystem.
Oh, I had to take a beat and sit down to make sense of this amazing roller coaster ride that we've had at MachineCon 2025. We will catch you again at the next MachineCon.
In just 5 years, Apple's ecosystem has created 2.5 lakh direct jobs and an estimated 7.5 lakh indirect jobs across India, marking one of the largest blue-collar employment surges in recent industrial history. Tata and Foxconn together now employ roughly 140,000 people on their assembly lines. Wow, that is less a single factory and more a township built around production. For a manufacturing ambition often described in trillion-dollar terms, the scale is definitely beginning to look tangible. But here is the plot twist. The face of Indian manufacturing isn't who you think it is. 70% of this workforce, women, aged 19 to 24. First-time workers. And they aren't just soldering circuits, they're actually rewriting the social contract. We've been saying this again and again on front page for months. Apple's supply chain is the new finishing school for India's daughters. Independence isn't just a slogan, it's now a bank credit notification. India now hosts 5 iPhone factories. Tata has 3, Foxconn has 2, and they aren't alone. 45 companies, yes, the MSMEs, the real grinders who are feeding this mammoth machinery. You know what? It's definitely a battlefield out there. High stakes training, rising salaries. And if you're 22 and looking for the pulse of the economy, don't worry, you just found it, because it's pulsing in these very assembly lines. Now, of course, for the numbers, 2025 saw $23 billion in iPhone exports. That's a 2-time jump from 2024. Smartphones are now India's top export category. Apple owns 76% of that entire pie. The narrative used to be assembled in China now. Now, of course, the box says, and it says so proudly, made in India. And you know what? The world is buying it. But there is a catch. As we always know, there is always a catch. The PLI scheme lowered the cost. Diversification gave India the trusted partner badge, but the landscape is shifting again. US tariffs on Chinese electronics are gone. The competition is now waking up. The China plus one strategy is getting crowded. And if India doesn't deepen its supply chain, this momentum could very well stall. It's definitely a race, and the track is getting very, very slippery. For decades, we exported the brains. We sent software talent to Silicon Valley. Now, of course, we are exporting the physical devices that run that very software. It's the ultimate pivot from the IT hub to the hardware foundation. And here, of course, is the front page take. This is the coming of the age moment. Jobs at a scale we haven't seen. Women walking into the factory. A trade balance that finally looks healthy. Software made India the brain of the digital world. Hardware is making it the spine. The question is, can we hold the weight? Please do let us know what you think in the comments below. Is India the new global factory, or is this just a very lucky streak? This, ladies and gentlemen, is Front Page by the AIM Network. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM.